In this program, we are going to trace the history of advertising, paying special attention to how it matured with the arrival of the Civil War, which took place between 1861 and 1865 between the northern and southern states of USA, and subsequently industrialization. The development of advertising agency and professionalism are also being detailed. We shall also give due importance to discuss the impact of magazines, radio, the Second World War and television on advertising.
The early history of advertising can be dated to the beginning of civilization. Word-of-mouth advertising by hawkers, announcing their articles and products for sale. Merchants roaming from street to street, town to town, and village to village for increasing awareness about their goods are some of the examples of advertising of the early days. In those days, artists glorified their rulers through frescoes, while messengers proclaimed political messages of the kings. Amongst the first examples of wall paintings are Indian rock art paintings that go back to 4000 BC. In 3000 BC, Babylonian merchants were hiring barkers to shout out about their products and the prices to passers-by. The Romans wrote their announcements on city walls. The troop of gladiators of the Aedile will fight on the 31st of May. There will be fights with wild animals, and an awning will keep off the sun.
By 15th century, there were abundant advertisements in Europe. Sequis Pinus want ads for various types of products and services were common. The shop bills and attractive artful business cards were promoted by tradesmen. The merchants would hang eye-catching signs and symbols just in front of their business premises. In 1625, the first news book, the Weekly News, was printed in England, which contained advertisements. Advertisements came to the colonies via England. Ben Franklin was selling advertising space in his Philadelphia Gazette. Let us now take a look at an advertisement which appeared way back in 1735, but which was typical of advertisements of those times.
A plantation containing 300 acres of good land, 30 cleared, 10 or 12 meadow and in good English grass, a house and barn and creek lying in Nantmel Township upon French Creek, about 30 miles from Philadelphia. Inquire of Simon Meredith, now living on the mentioned place.
Before the Civil War, advertising was a small business. The local retailers were primarily the users of advertising to encourage local area residents to visit their business. The medium of advertising was mainly the local newspapers. In the 15th and 16th century, the advertising in India grew to include handbills with the development of printing. Thus, it can be concluded that the emergence and development of printing technology played a significant role in the early days advertising, as the print was the only medium of mass communication.
Industrialization and the Civil War changed not only the social and cultural landscape, but also expanded advertising. In the 1940s, telegraph made communication possible over long distances. Cities and states were now linked by railroads. Expansion in factories required more laborers. Hence, huge numbers of immigrants were welcomed to the United States. Manufacturers were in a need of larger markets for their products. Merchants were interested in reaching consumers who were beyond the reach of local newspapers.
The rapid growth in industrialization was required because of the war. More factories were required to produce more war materials, as well as roads and railroads were expanded to take these material along with the troops. The farm workers were enlisted as soldiers to participate in the war, or they were recruited as workers to work in these new factories. Naturally, their absence from the fields had to be compensated with machinery. So, more machinery was required to take care of the departure of the farm workers from the fields. Ultimately, more factories were required to produce more machinery.
The 1880s saw numerous innovations in manufacturing, as well as the availability of new products. In early 1880s, the telephone and electric light were invented. During this period, more producers were chasing rising purchasing power of more consumers. Manufacturers were trying to differentiate their products. Brands like Quaker Oats, Ivory Soap, Royal Baking Powder, and many more came into existence.
The advertisers were in need of communicating the people about their brands. The growth in literacy and advantageous postal rates fueled the explosion of magazines. Naturally, magazines and advertising became the friends. Cyprus H.K. Curtis founded Ladies' Home Journal in 1883 and communicated it to a number of manufacturers.
The editor of the Ladies' Home Journal thinks we publish it for the benefit of American women. This is an illusion, but a very proper one for him to have. The real reason, the publishers, Curtis's reason, is to give you, who manufacture things American women want, a chance to tell them about your product. Advertising, as we observe it today, appeared in India in the 18th century with the birth of classified advertising. For the first time, advertisements were printed in the Bengal Gazette, the first newspaper which was launched in 1780 on a weekly basis.
In the beginning, advertisements were imported from the studios and printing presses of England. Later on, indigenous advertisements developed with the establishment of local newspapers and studios. This created a scope for first generation artists like visualizers, illustrators, copywriters, etc. The retailers started giving advertisements as the list of newly imported merchandise increased. And because of the success of this format of advertising, the growth of mail order advertising came into existence.
Advertising between Civil War and World War I was more complex, more creative, more expensive, and was executed on a larger scale. Keeping in view the demand, the advertising agencies expanded their operations.
F. Wayland Iyer began his full-service advertising agency in 1869, the oldest agency in the United States. Iyer, with the help of his staff of artists and writers, provided clients with ad campaign planning, creation and production of ads, as well as placing of the ads in the most appropriate media. Some other big agencies started at this time, which are still working today, are J. Walter Thompson, William St. and Lord and Thomas.
In 1900s, a number of Indian and foreign advertising agencies came into existence. In 1905, B. Dattaram and Company was set up, which continues to remain the oldest functioning advertising agency in India. Many other advertising agencies were set up to extend exclusive services only to multinationals like General Motors, Liver, and other such American advertisers. Till this time, the advertising agencies were not full service agencies, but they merely acted as brokers selling advertising spaces in newspapers.
During this period, three factors combined to move the advertising industry to establish its professional standards and regulatory norms. They were the reaction of the public and the medical profession to the abuses of patent medicine advertisers, the critical examination of most of the country's important institutions led by muckrakers, the establishment of the Federal Trade Commission or FTC in 1914 to monitor and regulate advertising.
As a result of these three regulations, a number of leading advertising agencies and publishers mounted a crusade against gross exaggeration, false testimonials, and other forms of misleading advertisements. To verify circulation claims, the Audit Bureau of Circulation was established. During this period, the Advertising Federation of America, the American Association of Advertising Agencies, the Association of National Advertisers, the Direct Mail Advertising Association, and the Outdoor Advertising Association became operational.
In 1922, the first radio ad was broadcast on WEAF, which was a 10-minute spot. Although people inside and outside the government were opposed to commercial support for this new medium, the general public did not oppose the radio ads. Many people welcomed radio ads because they thought that advertising can be a way to keep radio free.
Actually, the advertising agencies took over broadcasting and producing the shows in which their commercials appeared. In fact, ad business became the show business. The Everyday Hour was the first regularly broadcast series, which was a variety show sponsored by a battery maker. For Procter & Gamble, an ad agency, Blackett, Sample, Hummert developed a radio soap opera.
The revenues generated by the advertising industry through radio was supposed to be used during the Depression period. The Depression had its effects on the advertising business. In 1929, the stock market crashed, and by 1933, advertising lost about 2/3 of its revenues. During this period, extensive unemployment and poverty germinated a powerful consumer movement. In 1936, the Consumers Union published consumer reports for the first time to protect people from unscrupulous manufacturers and advertisers. To regulate advertising, in 1938, the Congress passed the Wheeler-Lee Act for granting extended powers to the Federal Trade Commission.
In 1934, the first full-service Indian advertising agency, Sista Advertising and Publicity Services, was established. Advertising during this period became more organized and formed media syndicates. India became a noteworthy market for the products. Because of this, Indianized ads for the products like Lux and Horlicks came into existence.
The Second World War was important with respect to the growth of all types of mass media, including advertising. During the war period of 1914 to 1945, the production of consumer products was almost zero. As a result, traditional advertising was limited. The advertising industry turned towards the war effort. Limited advertising with a patriotic theme was in practice.
A number of advertising and media associations work for the development of War Advertising Council, which used its expertise to promote government programs. The best known campaign was on the behalf of sale of war bonds, which helped in the sales of 800 million bonds.
After the end of the war, the group was known as the Advertising Council. It turned its efforts towards public service campaigns on behalf of a number of non-profit organizations.
The Second World War left a significant impact on the advertising industry with respect to its size and structure. In comparison to pre-war, the post-war taxes were much higher, which were levied on a manufacturer's war profits. The intention behind this high level of taxation was to limit wartime profits, with a view that the manufacturers should not be allowed to make huge benefits from death and destruction due to the war. But as a result, the producers reduced their profit and started putting their money back into the business rather than paying these high tariffs. At the same time, due to the shortage of raw material, it became difficult to expand the business. Therefore, the company started investing in corporate image advertising.
As a result, there was a significant expansion in the number and size of manufacturers' advertising departments and advertising agencies. The public was also primed by such advertising, anticipating the return of consumer products. Because of television, advertising was well positioned to bring products and people together. Radio formats, stars, and network structure had moved to the new medium. Television soon became the primary national advertising medium of the United States. The industry established the National Advertising Review Board to monitor potentially deceptive advertising. Interdependence between the medium and the advertising message made the history of television commercials interesting. After the quiz show scandal in 1959, advertisers and their ad agencies produced early television shows. It was expensive to be the sole sponsor of a network broadcast, as the networks were demanding a huge amount of money. In this situation, the advertisers spread commercials across a number of programs to reach more viewers. It was more efficient and profitable for them.
Because of a number of commercials in a program, the television was selling the same or almost similar products with similar qualities and similar costs. Therefore, the unique selling proposition became important to identify and boost a particular product with a particular manufacturer.
USP means unique selling proposition, highlighting the aspect of a product that sets it apart from other brands in the same product category.
In television's early days, commercials were highly product oriented, which changed with government regulation of cigarette companies. Now, with the loss of this important category of advertisers, the networks started searching for some other advertisers who would buy a 60-second slot on a popular time program. Lowering the cost of advertising was a possible solution, but the increasing production costs of network shows made this difficult. So, now the solution was to split the 60-second slot into more affordable 30-second segments.
In 1965, every network television commercial was a full 60 seconds, although 23% were piggybacked, which means a single sponsor presented two products in the same minute. However, in 1975, only 6% were a full minute long. Now the commercials were less about the products and more about the people who use them. This trend continued in terms of rise in the price of the commercial time, increase in production costs, growth in the number of commercials on the air, expansion in the airtime available for advertising, resulting in a shrinking in the length of the commercial spots. Now 15 or even 10-second spots are common. In India, Advertising Club Mumbai came into existence in 1954 to formalize advertising. It had member representatives from media organizations, marketing companies, advertising agencies, and associated professional bodies. The 1960s saw an upsurge of creativity and the scientific approach in advertising at the international level.
First time, the concept of positioning or unique selling proposition was promoted by Volkswagen campaign. In 1963, ITC made records with its slogan "Made for each other" for Will cigarette in India.
In the same way, the 1964 Tandurusti Ki Raksha campaign of Lifebuoy still remains the most successful. The hoarding campaign of Amul in 1967 has received a mention in the Guinness Book of World Records as the longest running outdoor campaign. Vivid Bharati transmitted the first commercial in 1967.
The 1970s had the availability of the initial advertising research. Through national readership studies, the data on consumer reading habit was provided. The first television commercial appeared on the television screen in 1978, but in true sense, the 1980s revolutionized the Indian advertising scene.
In 1980, color television transmission was introduced. Bombay Dyeing became the first color television commercial. In 1983, celebrity endorsement by sports stars got a shot in the arm with Kapil Dev admitting Palmolive da Jawab Nahi. In 1988, the public service film Mile Sur Mera Tumhara was a grand success. This film featured a host of celebrities from films, cricket, and the fine arts. Other public service campaigns, from family planning to literacy, were also inspiring. By the late 80s, advertising became a growing industry in India. The 1990s can be considered as the decade of media explosion. Cable and satellite television grew. Print became niche, and the internet entered India. Many corporations were set up which were operated solely on advertising revenue.
Because of emergence of software, television producers seeking talent, reappearance of cinema and penetration of internet, the importance of advertising increased in marketing.
For the first time in the history of advertising, India won 3 awards at the 43rd International Advertising Festival, Cannes. In the beginning of the 21st century, the Ministry of Tourism, Government of India, launched the Incredible India campaign to take advantage of the vast untapped potential of India as a tourist destination. This campaign was initiated on September 11, 2001, when the worldwide travel industry went into a slump. The campaign is in fact an integrated marketing communication approach promoted by numerous media like print, television, outdoor, internet, direct marketing, public relations, special events, etc. The results of the campaign have been encouraging. In 2006, the tourist traffic in the country increased by 15% as opposed to the targeted 10%.
India, incredible India.
At present, advertisement is at crossroads. Every day, innovations relating to production quality, media selection, targeting the market, etc., are coming within the purview of advertising. Today, guerrilla marketing is underway, which includes interactive advertising. Here, the viewer is able to interact with the advertiser and respond to messages, staged encounters of products in public places, narrowcast ads on the television screens through direct to home telecast, transmission of messages on the small screens of handheld devices, and many more. So, it is perfectly right to say that the form of advertising may change with the changes in its related factors such as products, services, ideas, media market, consumers, etc. But advertising is here to stay with us.